Welcome to Wine Time Mysteries, where we talk about true crime, the paranormal, mysteries, and cryptozoology with a dash of comedy. This podcast contains adult themes and is intended for mature audiences only. Don't forget to click follow and tickle that little notification bell. Now, find a comfy spot. We're about to start today's episode.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. Don't mind Joey, he's just chilling on back, just relaxing.
It's my favourite new thing.
Just to kick right back. My case today is on an Australian serial killer.
Get the fuck out of here. You've never done one.
I have never done one. He's actually a killer / rapist / piece of shit.
Oh.
That is Peter Dupas.
Dupas. He's a triple threat.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
No.
Peter Norris Dupas was born on the 6th of July, 1953.
Oh, he has a cancer.
Another cancer. A lot of cancers. In Sydney, New South Wales. His family later moved to Melbourne, Victoria, while he was still a baby. He was the youngest of 3 children and
Sorry.
Don't mind her, she's fucking getting all up in there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
No, you're not. You're so comfy. He was the youngest of 3 children and would have what could only be described as a relatively normal childhood, surprisingly.
Oh.
Yeah. Bitch. His mother was said to be loving / possibly overprotective, and his father was strict and did expect a bit more out of Peter.
Oh, like a dad.
Yeah. There was a bit of an age gap between Peter and his siblings, mentioning them moving out of home by the time Peter was 12 and his parents being elderly, although I couldn't find exactly how old elderly was. He was described as a slow learner in school and was said to have repeated the 1st grade. Classmates said he was quiet, an introvert, a bit strange, and often unhappy. Peter was bullied a bit in school for being overweight, and some kids would even call him Pugsley, you know, from the Addams Family. His eyes were also so dark that you couldn't easily see his pupils, which freaked out some of his classmates, and I'll show you later. On the 3rd of October, 1968, when Peter was just 15 years old and still in his school uniform, he headed over to his neighbour's house. She was a mother with a 5-week-old baby. He asked if he could borrow a knife to peel some potatoes for his mother. The neighbour didn't think anything of this and said, "Oh, that's nice, just wanting to help out your mother." Unfortunately, within seconds of handing the small, sharp knife over, Peter moved towards her and started stabbing her in the face, neck, and arms. She tried fighting him off, whilst also trying to reason with him. She would later go on to say that she could hear him mumbling, "I need to finish it."
So she lived?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Fortunately, the mother survived.
Oh.
And
Shut up, Joseph.
No.
Be patient.
She lived. So she did survive, and Peter would be placed on 18 months of probation. And
What?
admitted to Larundel Psychiatric Hospital for evaluation. They reported that he was a model child, friendly and lovely, and released after only 2 weeks. A psychiatrist would note that he appeared to have been overly protective by his mother, because, you know, apparently that makes you stab someone. His mother brushed this attack off and saw it as if he was just having a moment, pretty much. The neighbourhood was a bit up in arms and about how quickly, that Peter was released, and the mother that was attacked would end up moving homes within a few weeks. Do not blame her. By 17, Peter left school to work with his older brother as an apprentice fitter and turner at a local factory. Work colleagues would describe him as helpful with a baby face, and many of the women would protect him in a sense while he worked there. There was mention that at this time he did have a girlfriend, however, I couldn't find a lot of information on her. A former work colleague mentioned that Peter had brought his girlfriend to a Christmas party and they noticed that she had a black eye. The following Monday, they brought it up with Peter to be like, hey, don't hit your girlfriend. And Peter just turned around and punched the guy who said this in the stomach. This same guy even mentioned seeing a Stanley knife, cable and tape in the back of his car. Now, scary enough, Peter also applied to become a police officer in his teens, but thankfully was rejected. I can only imagine how he would have abused this power if he actually became a police officer, and you'll soon see once we once we dive in deeper. In 1973, when Peter was just 20 years old, he knocked on the door of another young mother and claimed his car had broken down. After asking if he could use her phone, he commented, well, if you happen to have a screwdriver, I might be able to fix the car myself. He snuck inside as she went to find a screwdriver, and upon her return, he threatened her with a knife, tied her up with a cord, struck her when she tried to resist, and threatened to harm her baby. He then proceeded to rape her. Days after this attack, Peter entered the homes of 2 other women using the old car has broken down trick. He stole money from one house, and the other, there wasn't any mention of him taking anything, so I think it was just more of a break and enter, maybe got scared off. Now, around this time, his car had been identified, and police would soon be knocking on Peter's parents' house. His father was adamant that Peter would do no such thing, and was dismissive to the officers. Peter, of course, was arrested, and officers noted that he seemed very timid, head hung, and his eyes were very vacant and just creeped the officers out. They also stated that Peter would go off on tangents to them, and they found this, because once again we'll see he got arrested a few times and was let out, so they made comments that he would start going off and they would think he would admit to something, and then he'd quickly just pull himself back and compose himself and be like, no, I didn't do it. So every time they could just see him, getting close to just letting it all out.
Almost Amber Hearding himself.
Oh, yeah. By September 1974, Peter was sentenced to 9 years in jail, with the judge quoting that you have a severe psychosexual problem and was to be seen as potentially dangerous. The judge also believed that the offence was premeditated and not acted under impulse. Unfortunately, he would only serve the minimum amount of jail time, which was 5 years, and he was released in 1979.
Hold on. So this rapist, serial rapist,
Yeah.
also stabbed a chick in the face and mouth and head and whatever.
When he was 15.
When
yes.
he was 15. Got 2 weeks for that. And then he's allowed out?
See what I mean? This just reminds me so much of Leonard Fraser. It's just bullshit. He moved back to his parents' house, to which they had now relocated to Frankston, Victoria, and after only 2 months of being out, Peter would go on to assault 4 women in 10 days. Unfortunately, he would end up overpowering.
You've been overpowered.
You've been overpowered. Unfortunately, no, don't laugh. I'm like, unfortunately.
It's unfortunate.
Oh, unfortunately. Unfortunately, he would end up overpowering and raping one of the women and stabbing another in the chest as she fought Peter off. It didn't take officers long to track Peter down, and he was sentenced to another 5 years in jail for these attacks. Because stupidly, well, I guess not stupid because he'd get caught for it in a sense, but he didn't stray far from his suburb. He just attacked people within the area that he was in because he's a fucking idiot. 1985, 32-year-old Peter was released from jail. Why are we releasing people like this? Now, I feel like you already know where this is headed, but Peter headed to a beach in Blairgowrie, exiting his car with a knife. He would stalk a lady for some time before coming up behind her, forcing his arm across her throat and pushing her down to the ground. He then proceeded to rape her as he threatened her with the knife. Once again, not long before the police caught up to Peter, he said,
I'm sorry for what happened. Everyone was telling me I was okay now. I never thought it was going to happen again. I only wanted to live a normal life.
Fuck right off, you piece of shit. He was charged with rape for the third time and was sentenced to 12 years in prison. He served this time in the psychiatric division of the prison and tried to attempt suicide twice, unfortunately failing. Well, I mean, it would have stopped a lot of the shit that goes on.
Oh, you're not wrong.
During this time, a psychiatric nurse took a liking to him.
Ooh, tell us all this time.
Yeah, right? She thought she could help and change him. Peter even proposed to her whilst in prison, and the two would marry in 1987.
Is this the Joker and Harlequin?
Right? The woman stated she felt obligated to see him through the prison time and hoped that she would see another side of him when he was released, being more masculine and taking more responsibility. Those were her exact words in a doco I watched. I was like, what? She even admitted that she did not marry him out of love. Once released from prison in 1992, he only served 7 years for his third rape charge, but that's fine.
7 of 12?
Yeah. The couple would then move in together. Now, I want to add that this was the first time he had lived with a woman besides his mother. He was now 39, and his wife said the relationship wasn't intimate and was more of a mother-son relationship type, as she was 16 years older than him. He was also quoted as being overly protective of her. In January 1994, his wife had to work an overnight shift at a nursing home, and Peter lost his shit. He wanted to go with her, to which they had a bit of an argument, and when she arrived home, he had some equipment packed in the garage for a fishing trip. Now, the items he had packed were some knives, a balaclava, or ski mask, as you will, a plastic sheet, and a shovel. He also had some condoms, masking tape, and handcuffs in his pockets.
What kind of fish is he trying to catch?
I do not know.
A human one.
Yeah. He headed to Lake Epilogue, where he stormed into a cubicle in the public toilets and held a woman at knife point, screaming for her to turn around. Fortunately, she could fight him off, and the woman's friends chased Peter. Thankfully, he lost control of his car, had an accident, and was arrested. This attack ended up in him being divorced, and somehow he was only charged with 1 count of false imprisonment and was sentenced to 3 years and 9 months in jail. Like, what an absolute cop-out. With the materials he had on him, he planned more than just rape.
That lady
Obviously.
was lucky.
Yeah. In September 1996, 43-year-old Peter was released from prison. He moved to a new area, started a new job, made some new friends, and even got himself a new girlfriend / another mother figure. When his girlfriend went overseas for a trip in 1997, Peter would once again lose his shit. Margaret Mayer, a 40-year-old sex worker who worked on the street over from where Peter lived, was last seen alive at a supermarket in Broadmeadows on the 4th of October 1997 at 12:20 a.m. Her body was discovered by a man collecting cans on the side of a highway in Somerton at around 1:45 p.m. She was under a cardboard sheet and horrifically mutilated. A post-mortem examination showed a stab wound to her left wrist, bruising to her neck, blunt force trauma on her right eyebrow, presumed to be from a cinder block, and lacerations to her arm. Her left breast had also been removed and placed in her mouth.
What?
Yeah, he cut off her tit. A black woolen glove was also found near her body, and police would later find out that it contained the DNA of Peter Dupas.
Escándalo.
So surprised. 1st of November 1997, 25-year-old Messina Halvagas visited her grandmother's grave in Faulkner Cemetery. After failing to meet her fiancé later that day, she was reported missing. Her body was discovered on the 5th of November, not too far from her grandmother's grave. Her clothing had been pulled over her head, and she had been stabbed 87 times to her knees, neck, and breasts. Peter's home was not too far from the cemetery, and a few witnesses saw him casually jogging through the cemetery wearing sunglasses on the day of her murder. I also just wanted to add that Peter's grandfather's grave was only 128 metres from the crime scene as well. This guy is sick. Peter would then go on to take one more life before being apprehended. 28-year-old psychotherapist and youth counsellor Nicole Patterson had wanted to open her own practice at home and had put an ad out in the local paper. Unfortunately, her first client would end up being Peter Dupas. On the 19th of April 1999, Peter arrived at Nicole's house for a morning appointment under a false name, and he claimed to have depression and a gambling addiction. As I said earlier, this was her first home client. She grabbed 2 cups of coffee, and upon her return, she was attacked by Peter. She was stabbed 27 times to the chest and back, and both of her breasts had been removed. She was found naked from the waist down and had small pieces of yellow PVC tape attached to her. It was later revealed that 2 neighbours heard screams coming from the house between 9 a.m. and 9:30, but didn't investigate or call anyone as they thought someone was just having a domestic.
I don't know about you, but normal domestics don't result in you getting your tits lopped off.
And I feel like if you're getting attacked as well, it'd be a different scream than just
There
a
will
yelling.
be a blood-curdling scream.
Yeah.
And maybe someone screaming, "Help me."
Peter was charged with her murder just 3 days later, and upon his arrest, they noticed scratches on his face and hand. He claimed these marks were from a piece of wood protruding in his shed, and, he just happened to get scratches from that.
Repeatedly.
Yeah. A search of his house would reveal bloodstained clothing, PVC tape like what they found on the body, a ski mask, newspaper clippings detailing Nicole's murder, and a newspaper containing her advertisements. On 22nd of August 2000, Peter was sentenced to life in prison for her murder, and he tried to appeal his sentence several times. Like, he never admitted to any of the murders. Now, you may be asking, hang on, he murdered 2 other people. Well, he wasn't charged until October 2002 for the murder of Margaret Mayer, obviously piecing together with how they were both stabbed and breasts removed. Of course, he pleaded not guilty, but was then charged with another life sentence on August 11th, 2004. Now, whilst in prison, Peter confessed to an inmate that he had also murdered Messina Halvagas, and the inmate, who was a former criminal lawyer by the name of Andrew Fraser, who fell due to drug charges, testified in court, and on August 2007, he was sentenced to another life sentence.
So 3 life sentences?
Yeah.
What is that, 25 years?
I don't know.
Per life sentence.
Now, before I wrap up this case, I did want to mention that police believed he was linked to another 3 murders. One who they think was Peter's first victim was Helen McMahon. She was beaten to death on the 13th of February 1985 while sunbaking topless. The location of her body was nearby to where Peter raped the woman at Blairgowrie. Officers thought he was in prison at the time, however, he was on pre-release in the same area Helen was killed. I'm gonna say guilty. The second was 31-year-old Renita Brunton, who was stabbed 106 times in her second-hand clothing store in Sunbury. Now, the final victim was linked to Peter, and he was charged with the murder in 2018. However, the case was dropped as the inmate to whom he confessed the crime became ill and could not take the stand. Kathleen Downs, a 95-year-old woman, was stabbed to death on 31st of December 1997, a month after Messina was murdered. Investigators found that Peter had telephoned the nursing home a bit before she was murdered, and when confessing to the inmate, he said he killed her because she looked like his mother. Unfortunately, this piece of shit is still alive and will turn 69 this year. He is currently serving 3 life sentences with no eligibility for parole. Unfortunately, this is another case of why the hell do they get let out 3 consecutive rapes, not to mention all the other attempts, then end in murdering possibly 6 women. And that, my dear mung beans, is the horrific case and monster that is Peter Dupas.
Peter fucking fuckwit Dupas.
Yeah. Little bitch face Dupas. Yeah, I think he had some mummy issues.
You think?
I think so, especially cutting the boobs off. Like, that got me like, whew.
The more I hear stories about these duplicitous people who are locked up and then released and then locked up and then released and locked up and then released and then go out to do something even worse, it makes me question the system.
It's funny, one of the documentaries I was watching, the police officer that originally arrested him, I think after his first rape, was like, yeah, we knew he was going to kill someone, and I even wrote that down in his file.
But then what happened with that?
Well, by the second, third, who fucking cares, right? It's ridiculous.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.